Candor, frankness, information, they're all things that we deserve, both about the attack in Butler and the thwarted plot in West Palm Beach. But in order to get the answers to these many questions that remain, we need to spend a lot more time talking about these incidents. Now, thanks to the government's court filing, there are a lot of new details about the plot against Trump in Florida, about Ryan Wesley Routh. In a 10-page proffer, Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Dispoto included a photograph of a note he says was written by Routh prior to the attempted assassination and left with a civilian witness who turned it over to authorities. Now, the note said in part, quote, "Dear world, this was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry I failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It is up to you to finish the job." According to the government, Routh would have had an easy shot at Trump from his position along the fence line by the 6th green at Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach. The would-be assassin allegedly established a sniper perch, which Prosecutor Dispoto, I should say, equated to something straight out of a war zone. Now, the government says that Routh's fingerprints were found on the scope of the rifle that was recovered outside the golf course. The serial number on the weapon was obliterated and unreadable. And the government argued that Routh's phone records and Google searches, along with the recovery of a handwritten document that contained a list of locations where Trump was expected in August, September, and October, that all demonstrated that his plot was months in the making. Judge McCabe called the government's evidence strong and added that the evidence it presented of potential additional charges may be even stronger. And as to motive, that's the million-dollar question. Well, the government recovered a notebook that was filled with names and numbers pertaining to Ukraine. You see, Routh previously claimed in an interview with the New York Times that he spent months in Ukraine trying to recruit soldiers who fled Afghanistan to fight alongside the Ukrainians. He also wrote a book in which he stated, quote, "I must take part of the blame for the person that we elected for our next president that ended up being brainless, but I am man enough to say that I misjudged and made a terrible mistake. And Iran, I apologize. You are free to assassinate Trump as well as me for that error in judgment." Okay, so clearly a lot to go over. Let me bring in Charles Marino, former Secret Service agent and former Homeland Security advisor. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it and good seeing you. What did you learn today? What was your main takeaway?
Well, if this was, in fact, a confirmed assassination attempt of the former president. So if there was any doubt out there in the mainstream media, let's set that aside. This individual put a lot of planning into this effort, which included surveillance for approximately a month in the Palm Beach area to include of Mar-a-Lago and this golf course. I wasn't surprised that we found additional protective intelligence coming out of that vehicle to include documentation of previous sites visited by the former president and future sites visited. This was a huge problem. If he spent as much time as he did in Palm Beach on the ground conducting surveillance, I have a lot of questions as to why he was not detected.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, look, the work of Secret Service that day has to be applauded, right? The agent was looking at the 6th screen before Trump came, sees this guy, opens fire. I mean, it was, as the acting director said, this was based on protocol. They did it exactly by the book. He saved the president's life. The question is, like you said, if he had been planning this for a while, if he was scouting the area, what questions do you want from Secret Service or another law enforcement agency right now?
Well, there's a lot of similarities with what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, Jesse, and that is we saw the inner perimeter at both locations have to step up and react to thwart a followed-through assassination attempt, a successful assassination attempt against the former president. What is up for discussion and needs to be is this outer perimeter of security that detects, deters, and disrupts potential threats. If we keep waiting on this last line of defense to catch everything, that's great, the system worked, but that's not how far it should make it in terms of proximity to the former president or any protectee. When you see that inner perimeter have to respond and react the way it did in both Butler and in Palm Beach, that means there's been a failure of the overall security plan. And no matter how much of a success the former director says the Trump International Golf Course was for the Secret Service, those agents were once again set up for failure because of a lack of resources to meet the threat level of the former president. meaning that not enough resources were staged in those middle and outer perimeters of security to detect and deter this threat well in advance.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.